it seems that many children nowadays are being diagnosed with ADHD. ADHD is attention deficit hyperactive disorder. There's a higher prevalence in ADHD for boys than there's for girls. But the reality is there's more women or girls that have ADHD than boys. The only thing is that they tend to go undiagnosed until later on in like adulthood. Seeing ADHD in children is common. I don't think that it has something to do with the children becoming ADHD. I think that many adults just have been like not diagnosed or didn't see the symptoms until later on in life, especially for girls and women. A lot of women, they just kind of learn to live with it. So they develop coping mechanisms to be able to get through their day to day. But those coping mechanisms sometimes aren't healthy coping mechanisms, so that's what's kind of hard to do. According to the National Library of Medicine, women, they have different symptoms that get overlooked than boys because they're more internalized than externalized like boys do. They have the impulsivity, the jumping, the not being able to focus and stuff. Having these different types of coping mechanisms and these different types of symptoms can lead to like adulthood, like depression and anxiety for women. So a lot of the times, because it's internalized, their symptoms get diagnosed as anxiety or depression or bipolar disorder. And in reality is they have ADHD, they just cope with it in a different way than boys do. Boys just tend to show it. Um, there's it being undiagnosed can also lead to unhealthy coping mechanisms. So because they have anxiety and the depression and stuff like that, some people cope in like alcohol or like just not healthy coping mechanisms that can lead to other things. So it's really something that should be looked into or be more aware of, to be able to look at how girls have their symptoms and to be able to get them the help they need from an early age on. Then later on in adulthood, which you still can get the help you need, but it's harder to be able to now cope in that aspect. Girls or women with ADHD, they have, like I said earlier, they get overlooked with their diagnosis because they have internal symptoms. So, boys tend to show the hyperactivity, the impulsivity, the not focusing, the talking a lot. And girls tend to just start like having better coping mechanisms because they mimic people like women, like girls, the other girls that they want to, be part of, like, a group in school. They start to mimic the way that they are so that they can fit in. Whereas boys, they don't care. They just kind of, do what they're feeling. Um, they kind of just, internalize it. So they daydream. Like that's what it goes off of. They daydream instead of just like talking and talking and talking. Or they're talkative. Like because girls seem to be more talkative, they're just kind of pushed off of, oh, they're just talkative, or oh, they daydream a lot. When in reality, it's because they can't focus and they have a lot going on in their head that they don't get that help that they need, and it just gets overlooked. They're just they don't show that inattentivity or the hyperactivity side like the boys do. They're not hyperactive. Everything in their brain is going like a million miles a minute, but they're not showing it. They're not talking about it. They're not saying it. They just kind of like are off in their own like focus. According to the National Library of Medicine, teachers overlook the ADHD in girls because they compare the boys' symptoms to the girls. But parents are more capable of seeing the differences because they'll compare what their child is in the developmental stage with other children. So it really comes down to the parents, and teachers should start being able to also differentiate that instead of just comparing to the male population, to the girls, what girls should be at in that developmental stage. Um, girls just have a better understanding of wanting, like I said earlier, fit in. So they mimic the behaviors that are acceptable. So they want to be accepted in a group, they want to be accepted in school. So they just start to mimic what is acceptable, socially acceptable, to be able to fit in with everybody, and they don't show that they're struggling, or they choose not to show that they're struggling, just so that everybody can, like, just be okay with them, and them fit in. But being undiagnosed as a child, as a girl, it does have effects on you until your adulthood. So that's why, like, a big thing is that they have strained relationship with friends. Like, so a lot of girls with ADHD, according to the national to the article, girls with ADHD just have fewer friends, and because they're more closed off, and they just don't focus on. So a big thing with ADHD, as I've learned as a mom of somebody with ADHD, is that you don't it's like a you don't think about it if it's not in front of you. So you kind of, if you're not talking to your friends every single day, you kind of just stop thinking about them. And so you just kind of start closing yourself off. And in adulthood, in school it's easier because you see them every single day, but in adulthood it gets complicated, so you start having more strained relationships. Women get undiagnosed in their childhood because they get a higher prevalence of being diagnosed with anxiety or depression, and even bipolar disorder. And it's just it's a misdiagnosis, because if you get the underlying factor of ADHD and you get treated for that anxiety and that depression, it's not going to show. uh it's there's, like, the reality is that there's an underlying cause in the ADHD. It can be treated, and it could help, like, the depression and the anxiety, or the depression and anxiety is, like, just mimic the symptoms of ADHD, and you're getting treated for something that could be treated in a different manner. Um, they see women in adulthood with ADHD seem to be disorganized in their home life. They have difficulty sleeping, they have problems with stomach aches and headaches, and they just have a lot of issues in that aspect. They look disorganized, but there's just that they have so much going on that they don't get everything set up in an according way. And so it does start to affect your life in adulthood. Even though they look like they found good coping mechanisms, there's a lot of things that go untreated, and you just kind of try to live with that. But if you do find out that you are somebody that could possibly have ADHD, the best thing is to get help for that. Many women and girls get undiagnosed, or are undiagnosed with ADHD. And research shows that women sometimes, instead of going to get treated for anxiety or depression, they find coping mechanisms in alcohol or drugs, or strained friendships. It does have a long-term effect. And so the best thing is for to keep doing research, and parents to, if you see something with your child, you speak up, and you take them to the doctor, and you tell them, like, hey, this and this, because it really will benefit them later if they can get on medication, or the therapy or help that they need as a child, to help learn how to cope with this diagnosis in adulthood. And it's going to make a big difference for them. um as a woman, if you feel, as an adult, if you feel that you have to do some more research, and you feel that you could possibly be somebody with ADHD, it doesn't hurt to go to the doctor, and tell them what's going on with you, and see if they can help you, because that it really, you can still get help, and you can still get your life on a better track if you feel like you're still disorganized and you have a lot of issues that come from having that ADHD. um I'm a mom with somebody with ADHD. A lot of women don't realize that they have ADHD until they have a child or a boy that gets diagnosed with ADHD. And then they're like, oh, well, it's genetic. So who in your family has ADHD? And you're like, and then you do the research, and you see and notice that you have a lot of symptoms that you just never realized could have been from that. And you've been undiagnosed for years. So it's definitely something to get, looked into. If you have any questions, go to your doctor, and just kind of get you the help that you need.